And welcome. So, hey, I'm glad that you made it through that first gate. By now, I must have had hundreds, maybe even thousands of people ask me what was on this single piece of paper, this one right here. I did a talk a few years back where I told the story of the most intriguing and profound interview I ever conducted in my entire career. Now, you have to know that I've had many intriguing and profound interviews, as that's been my business as the main curator of the entire success industry for the past 20 years. Having led 3 success-focused television networks and as publisher and editor of Success Magazine, my job was to meet and interview and then publish the stories and success insights of most every successful person that you can think of, including the likes of Steve Jobs, the now late Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Jack Welch, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Howard Schultz of Starbucks, Mark Zuckerberg, and on and on and on. But this interview, the one I'm going to share with you now, was even more intriguing and certainly even more profound. And it was an interview that was never published or ever heard by another living soul. That was the deal. That was the condition, that it remained private and for personal use only. So when I met this man, the one I'm referring to, he was 101 years old, a bona fide real-life centenarian. And he's an intensely private and humble man, so he requested that I keep his name and his family anonymous. So from this point forward, we will just refer to him simply as William, after my own late, great, and beloved grandfather. So let me tell you a little about the almighty William. And by the way, I will explain how he acquired the nickname Almighty Will and why he was considered almost godlike in his hometown towards the end of our encounter together. It really is an amazing story. So William immigrated to the United States with his parents from what is now the Ukraine, was the former USSR. He grew up in abject poverty. He was raised in the basement of another family's home for most of his childhood, and he never even graduated high school. However, despite the odds, this man went on to become extremely wealthy, highly respected, and very well loved. That's the success trifecta in my book. William had achieved what I consider the ultimate in success. At over 100 years old, his life was abundant in every way you could imagine: resources, happiness, health, and love. So I couldn't wait to discover how he did it. What super secrets he had discovered in this century that he had lived on this earth that made this type of success, especially after such humble beginnings, possible. I was intensely fascinated. So in preparation for our interview, I requested that William think through each of his 100 years on this planet and write down all the key lessons, all the insights, principles, and philosophies that he believed contributed to his extraordinary success. This would be wisdom drawn from what was then, at that point, 37,000 days lived on this planet. I encouraged him to spare no detail, suggesting that his insights would become a gift to future generations of his family, which I promised to memorialize for him. That was our exchange. The deal is what made this encounter possible. So the day of our interview had finally arrived, and I was excited. Now, of all the people that I have met and interviewed, I was never one to really get really excited. I mean, people are just people, and they just come in different shapes and sizes. But this man, for some reason, was immensely intriguing to me. I just knew that a man who has personally witnessed and experienced the last 100 years of life on Earth, and then was able to thrive so abundantly through it all, would be a treasure trove of life-changing insights and wisdom into the spirit and capability of all human potential. And I had no idea just how life-changing this experience would actually end up being. So when I arrived at William's home, I announced myself at his guard gate, and I watched as a massive iron gate slowly opened. And I have to admit, my heart did start to palpitate a bit. I then drove the long, winding cobblestone road that led up to his home. And as soon as I got over the crest, I could see this sprawling estate below me, this palatial mansion. Holy heck, I thought. I mean, wow. I'd never seen anything like it in person. So I parked, I grabbed my journal, my recording device, and a backup full of batteries, just in case the interview went late into the evening. So as I approached the front door, now even more excited and ready to take in the fire hose of big ideas, the profound wisdom, and the awe-inspiring advice that made up this kind of life possible, I was greeted by his estate manager and then guided into his personal library. So now, this room was spellbinding. I mean, it was 2 stories of rich mahogany wood, shelving holding thousands of rare as well as recently published well-known books. I slowly turned, just trying to take it all in. I mean, it literally took my breath away. There was a skylight that was right in the middle of the room, and it illuminated where 2 dark brown vintage leather wing-back chairs were placed on either side of a marble-topped coffee table. And then there was a vase of freshly cut flowers on top. I mean, the scene, it looked like it should have been the cover of a Ralph Lauren catalog. Even as I think back at it now, I can still remember the smell of those leather chairs. And it was only moments after I sat down and set up all my recording devices that William entered. Yes, it was evident that he was old. I mean, certainly his skin was wrinkled, it was creased, and it was nearly translucent. His gait was a little slower than most anybody else, but it was steady. And as he made his way to the chair next to me, I noticed a grace in his movement that I had never seen before. I mean, it's a grace that must only come after 100 years. So I rose to greet him, and as I shook his hand, and he shook it firmly, I might add, I knew for sure right then that this was going to be an interview of a lifetime. So we settled into our seats, and I asked William if he had written out all that he had learned that made this kind of success possible. He nodded that he had. And in that pause that followed, I quickly scanned around the room. He had walked in empty-handed, so I thought that the manuscript that he had written out must already be there somewhere on a shelf, a large stack of papers on a desk somewhere. No doubt it would be a small ream of paper at least. This level of grand success was not possible without a plethora of unique insights and wisdom, no doubt. In that same pause, he reached into his jacket and he pulled out a folded piece of paper. And it's this one right here, a single sheet. He handed it to me and he said, "It's all here." I grabbed it and I thought, huh? It's all here? I said out loud, maybe then realizing that I might have said that a bit disrespectfully. He nodded and said, "Indeed, everything is on that one piece of paper." So I read it in about 30 seconds flat. And as you can see, it's only 2/3 filled out. And I said, it can't be. I'm still staring at the sheet as I'm reading this in disbelief. If I were to be totally candid, I was actually a little disappointed. So not wanting to be maybe more disrespectful at this point, I continued. I said, "Look, William, there's no way that all of this," waving around this grand room that we were sitting in, "all of this is made possible by only what's on this single piece of paper." Well, he smiled knowingly and said, "It is. There's nothing more anyone needs to know or do than what appears on that piece of paper." After a few beats of silence, he could tell that I needed more, so he continued. "The problem for most is that they won't believe it, and thus they will miss it until it's too late." So from there, our interview continued. Although I don't think I asked another question, he spoke slowly and purposefully, his voice low and thick with an accent from an ancient old Europe whose boundaries have long since been redrawn. He said, "Hand that piece of paper to any young man who is seeking his fortune, and he will disregard it. He will assume that it can't be that simple. He will spend the rest of his time looking for more complicated and fanciful answers for his success. It is only when a man is at the end of his journey," William continued, "it is only then, when he's making sense of his life, that he will reread it and say, 'That was it.' So simple, nothing more. And he will then wish that he had realized it sooner." William paused as if he were waiting for me to write something down, but I couldn't even move. I didn't want to miss a single word, and I feared that even the motion of my pen would distract me. So William continued. He explained to me, he said, you know, my greatest advantage is that I wasn't that smart. He said I was raised simply. Simple disciplines, simple principles. I saw no other option than to find the simple way to do things and then just do them. No questions, not complicating it. I didn't know better. Then he smiled and he said, with time I learned this wasn't a disadvantage, as I had once suspected. This, in fact, became the foundation for business, relationship, money, and success in life. Everything is based on simple, basic principles. Do not try to be so smart, he said, or be smart and see wisdom in simple truths. Don't mess with them, just do them. Now I have to tell you, every day that goes by, I understand what William was trying to say more and more. I know that I'm still discovering the depth of what I just relayed to you. It is more profound than you might even understand yourself right now. Now I will tell you about my experience with William as we progress through the rest of this encounter. But now I want to start sharing some of the profound insights William had and what he wrote on this piece of paper here. Each line on this sheet is literally a life and success accelerating insight. So this program that we're doing here together is designed to pass along just 3 of the things that are written on here. And if you like what you hear, I'll tell you where you can find more of what's on here at the end. So I handed the paper back to William and I asked him to pick out one of his favorite. So he quickly quipped that I was asking him to pick out one of his favorite children. Each of them were special, he said, and immensely valuable in their own right in some way in his life. So I asked, okay, then you pick out one that you think allowed you to have such substantial financial success. He said, oh, well, then let's start with this one. And he looked down, he says, oh, this is a good one, he said with a big grin as he read it. And here's what it says. More is achieved in compressed time. Now, that sounds simple, right? Easy to miss. Easy to just keep reading and moving past it, as I did when I first read it and as he first explained it. But then he took me on a journey of explanation. And man, oh man, I have to tell you, this one insight, this one only, has literally catapulted my success, my results, and my ability to influence and impact others with my work. I just want to tell you up front, this one right here is a doozy. So let me unpack this unassuming but utterly profound truism that more is achieved in compressed time. I have since termed it success compression. So let me explain to you how it works. In fact, actually, this was one of Steve Jobs' greatest tricks too. People marvel at the wizardry of Steve Jobs and how he was able to achieve so much in such a short period of time. How'd he do it, they wonder? Well, now I know. He knew and exercised this first principle. More is achieved in compressed time. Steve, as you might remember, was often accused of having what others called a reality distortion field, where his expectation of what was possible was distorted according to other people. But Steve knew more was achievable in compressed time, that you could seemingly bend time by compressing it. Meaning if you apply intense energy, focus, and concentration for an undistracted, sustained period of time, that fully applied pressure can create what are called quantum leaps in outcome and results. This phenomenon is so extraordinary that it actually seems to, as others called, distort reality and bend it or compress time. So here's a simple metaphor that you're familiar with to help you make sense of this. Look, it's like trying to get 4.4 million pounds of a rocket ship off the ground. To do so, you first have to defy Newton's first law, or also known as the law of inertia, which states an object at rest stays at rest, unless acted upon by an unbalanced external force. So, to get man's first step on the moon, we needed first to get him off the ground. And that was actually the hardest part of the entire journey. So let me give you some perspective for you. Of the 930,000 gallons of fuel that was used to get the Apollo space shuttle to and from the moon, over 500,000 gallons of that fuel, more than half of it, was used to just get it off the ground, just to break the shuttle's inertia. Do the math with me here. That means that of the 478,000 miles that they were going to travel, more than half of all of that energy of the trip was going to be expended in the first 2 miles of the 478,000 in total. And that is true for you too. And this is why this is a really big tip that you're going to want to get here. You see, starting, launching, breaking inertia, expending enough energy to get going on anything is the hardest and most energy exhausting part of any endeavor. And you end up doing it many times all day based on how you structure your day. You start working on that presentation, and then you switch to having to respond to a customer service issue, and then you switch to start to work on that proposal, and then you get interrupted by a got-a-minute request at your door. You go back to trying to work on that presentation again, then you switch to check email or respond to that text message that came in. Each time you start a new task, you have to expend all that energy to get it barely off the ground. Then you get distracted or interrupted, or you think of something else that you need to do. And even though all that fuel was already expended, the rocket ship of that project drops back down and settles into inertia again. And you wonder why you are so freaking tired at the end of the day. It's not for lack of effort. Hell, you're expending an awesome amount of effort all day, everywhere, getting things 2 feet off the ground and going nowhere. This is how most people spend their days, in a fury of fits and starts, starting something and then being distracted or interrupted away by others or by their own cognitive switching. Now, the flip side of this is, and this is where we get into William's wisdom and learn the trick behind Steve Jobs' reality distortion field. Newton's law also tells us that a body in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force. That means once you've applied this massive amount of energy and efforts to break inertia, you then activate the enigmatic force of what is called momentum. And that momentum will carry you farther and faster on a fraction of the energy and in a fraction of the amount of time, unless, as Newton warns us, it's acted upon by an unbalanced force, meaning a distraction or an interruption. So let me try to explain the awesome magical force of momentum so that we understand how tragic it is for you and your results when it dies. So imagine a big steam locomotive. You know, the 250-ton, 10,000 horsepower iron horse kind of the early 1900s. It takes a massive amount of steam energy to get that 250-ton iron horse to simply move 2 inches. Massive. That is what it takes to get you to start anything new. A massive amount of energy to make 2 inches of progress. Now, you can stop the iron horse cold, no matter how much energy you give it, with a 2-inch block placed under its front wheel. It can't generate enough energy to get over even a small impediment from when it's going from a standstill. This is also true about you. The slightest distraction when starting something can stop you cold. An email alert, a ding of your phone, even a noise or audible conversation that's happening outside your door, or the gardener outside your window can stop forward progress cold. But now, once you get that iron horse going, as it builds up speed, moving faster and faster, and eventually it crosses a speed to weight threshold and settles into a consistent rhythm, that is when it breaks into that enigmatic force known as momentum. In that mode, it requires a lot less steam and energy to keep it going. And in that mode, the mode of momentum, it becomes nearly unstoppable. And now, if you place a concrete steel reinforced wall on the tracks in front of it, if that 250-ton iron horse is in momentum, it will blow through that concrete steel wall as if it were paper. The power and force of momentum is that powerful. What I'm trying to tell you here is you have that kind of indomitable power as well. Once you break the inertia of starting a new project, and as you build up speed and drop into a state of concentration and deep work, you will eventually cross a threshold, also known as the zone, where you will tap into your superhuman strength and potential. Now, you could make miles of progress in a dramatically compressed period of time and have to use a lot less energy to do so. Your results, the massive amount of progress that you can make in a compressed period of time, will almost seem like magic. But, and here's the big fat warning I'm trying to drill into your head here. If that iron horse comes to a stop, it will require, once again, a massive amount of energy and time just to get it back to where it was previously, plus all the significant progress that was lost. This is the compound effect of having lost momentum in the first place. And this is how most people spend their day, all day, generating all the energy to get your 250-ton horse going on something, only to be derailed by a distraction or to switch to a different project or task, requiring you to get a new 250-ton horse of a new task off a dead stop all over again. On the flip side, if you learn from the profound wisdom of what William and now I am trying to pass on to you here, if once you break inertia, start on something, stick with it without distraction or interruption, build up speed, or in our case here, cognitive flow, you can massively compress success. You can achieve seemingly impossible progress into a seemingly impossible short and compressed period of time frame. And if that's not enough, it requires a lot less overall effort and energy to do so. Or as William said simply, more is achieved in compressed time. You see, this principle right here, success compression, is the one that I would attribute much of the significant success that I've experienced since learning it from William. I've applied it to almost every area of my life that I need to radically accelerate my results in a short period of time, and it has worked every time. The results it achieves does seem like magic, and I know that it has definitely baffled the hell out of my competitors, my peers, and others who have witnessed from afar. They have wondered, how in the hell have you done all this? Well, I am now disclosing this almighty strategy that I've been using to make a lot of what it is that I've been doing possible. For instance, I explained the specific success compression method that I used to go from a dead stop, as in a complete newbie, signing up for accounts and starting with 0 followers on each of the social media platforms, and then applying success compression, how I was able to go from 0 to reaching millions of people every day in a ridiculously short period of time, by comparison to everyone else, by using this success compression. I explained how I use success compression when expanding a national distribution company and having to recruit, train, develop agents and new sales leaders. Using this strategy, I could recruit and expand more in 90 days than anyone else in the country did in an entire year. It's that powerful. I also walked through how I set up my calendar to leverage success compression. This strategy allows me to produce more in 90 days than most of my competitors can even dream of accomplishing in a year. It really is incredible. It's almost an unfair advantage. All right, well, we have come to the end of this first principle, and now, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to say goodbye to 80% of you. Those of you, the statistics say, never finish what they start. The quitters, as they are called. To those I say, thank you for stopping by. I bid you a fond farewell. For those of you who are not quitters, all you have to do is to continue to progress. Stay the course and move on to the next video. Let's see how many of you will make it. Oh, and I hope that you do. It's here. It's in this next encounter where I disclose one of William's discoveries that will actually give you God-like power. No joke. With it, you can literally manufacture time, which will indeed shortcut your path to fortune, affection, and market dominance. This principle is so powerful, so impactful for William and his family that as he began to describe it, he choked up. And I was kindly asked to turn off the recorder while he composed himself and then told me the rest of the story behind this profound principle. Yes, the story he told me was that life-affecting and that life-altering. Quite literally, in fact, life-altering. So with his permission, and again, protecting his anonymity, of course, I'm going to share it with you in the next encounter. So click below. It's likely to have the same effect on you as it did on me. I'll see you in the next video.